Does anyone actually remember the episode Buried in a Good Book?
You know, that weird fantasy-themed episode I reviewed 2 years ago. Oh my god.
That mostly served as an excuse for empty medieval-themed spectacle, but at least it had a wholesome friendship resolution. Yeah, that Buried in a Good Book. I remember checking it out when it first aired, covering it on my channel, and then never thinking about it ever again. Not even when The Greatest Gift came out, and it turned out that episode was plot relevant after all. Nope. For me, that episode always just sort of existed. It was part of the awkward but well-intentioned phase between the Blockywaki's sheer narrative perfection and the beginning of the board tribe taking over the show. Sweet moral and great spectacle, but not much else. But then, something happened that I never expected. Something happened that forced me to re-examine this episode in a whole new light. The animatic came out. A bit of context for any new viewers to the channel. Tell Your Tale got prematurely cancelled by Hasbro in 2024, and we're now living in the era of G5 leaks, a well-intentioned fan-driven effort to keep this generation going with official material that was never meant to see the light of day. And with The Greatest Gift being the final new animatic that was able to be released, as everything after this is just scripts, the Path to Skyward's release team were kind of forced to re-examine their strategy. And so, to keep the fans happy in between the extremely long waits for script adaptations, they decided, hey, let's release the original versions of older episodes. At least that's what I think happened. And well, this is where we're at. Buried in a Good Book is the second to last older animatic that was released for now, as they're probably on a break or something. And I am not kidding you guys, when I say this version of the episode feels completely different. And it all comes down to the cut content, which includes not only more scenes of the actual adventure in Questopia, but a full-on character arc for Misty as well. A character arc that she did not have in the original. Actually, I think this might be the original, and the final release is the... You know what, let's just go with the original. Thanks to these leaks, we can now analyze just how exactly details can change a story. Spoilers for the original animatic of Buried in a Good Book if you haven't seen it, but honestly, it's been months. You absolutely should. This video will be waiting for you once you do. Now let's get on to the video. Chapter 1. Misty's Character Flaw. So the animatic opens almost the same as the final release, but with one major change. Instead of barging in and immediately casting B's spell that gets she and her friends sucked into the spellbook, Misty here just produces a simple magical floating butterfly, which is then instantly contrasted with her friends performing so much more impressive feats with their magic. Now this change right from the offset is already so much better than the final release. Why is that, you might be asking? Don't both openings fulfill the same purpose narratively, that being to introduce the central conflict of the episode? And to that I say, yes, both openings do accomplish the same thing. But here's the key difference that makes the animatic better. This extended opening exists to establish Misty's core character flaw, the one that she will need to overcome throughout the episode's runtime. That character flaw being, Misty feels inferior to her friends. She just barged in, excited to show off the spell that she had been working on, only to find out that her friends are just better than her at everything. They can do a whole lot better than just create a simple butterfly spell, because they've had a whole lot more time to practice their magic. This narrative contrast between the amateur butterfly spell and the other feats like the carnivorous plant and the fruit tornado exists to make Misty feel embarrassed, like she isn't good enough, and that she should come up with something more impressive. And this is actually a very realistic portrayal of what it's like to feel inferior to other people. Realism is something that Misty episodes excel at, and this one is no different. I'm sure that many of you in real life have felt the way that Misty does here, that your friends are just better than you at everything they do, and that you'll never be as good as them. This can be anything, from sports to even academics. And it's a hard feeling. It's a hard pill to swallow that not every person is right for every job. I've been there myself. I've had in the past and still have friends that are just better at doing something I enjoy than I am. That kind of pressure is a difficult one, and it can often drive you to attempting more risky stunts to impress them. You want to be cool like they are, so you stop thinking rationally and start scrambling for ways to be better. And this is exactly what happens in the episode. Misty feels insecure about her own abilities, and she starts frantically flipping through the book, trying to find something cooler than her mediocre butterfly spell. She loses confidence in herself, and she starts acting irrationally. And this is where the spellbook sucks them all in. Already, we have so much more character right from the opening 1 minute and 10 seconds than we ever had in the final release. In the final cut, what is Misty's character flaw? Oh, I guess she just can't do magic right considering she immediately screws up. Yes, that's awesome. Misty sucks at magic, now everyone's trapped. Yay, conflict set up. Good job, guys. We did it. Yippee! How no one is mad at her for getting them trapped is beyond me. It's just so insulting. You had the perfect relatable setup that had the potential to speak to kids feeling left out compared to their peers, and you just neutered it. The social function of this story is gone. The final release's opening is so rushed and the pacing is so rapid that you just get the impression that the episode wasn't interested in setting up any sort of meaningful conflict at all. It had the main set piece it wanted to get to, and everything before that main set piece was just quickly going through the motions without understanding the nuances of what goes into setting up a good story. No deeper meaning and no character flaw for what should be the protagonist of this episode. But it turns out there was a personal conflict introduced. Misty did have a character flaw here, a really good one. It was just completely cut out in the final release. The entire heart, pun completely intended, behind the main plot is just gone. Butchered in the edit, because the final release prioritized getting to the main spectacle over the deep personal character arc that was intended to be conveyed through that spectacle. This extended opening scene introduces a much more natural continuation of that arc that began in Mysterious New Magic Room, where Misty is still not completely good at magic. She's still learning, but this episode acts as a natural progression of that storyline. And that's what makes this animatic already superior to the final episode. Chapter 2. Why Details Matter. The next big change in the animatic is the inclusion of more context behind the individual quests. Now, I just want to say that in this section, the exclusion of these little moments don't detract from the quality of the story anywhere near as much as leaving out Misty's character flaw. For the most part. There is one egregious exception that I will get into. But if we're talking about this section generally, if you have to cut things down for time, leaving out these moments is understandable. However, from a storytelling perspective, it is just better to have these moments in regardless, for reasons I will get into. I'll be talking about two parts of the episode here, those being Sunny and Zip's quests. With Sunny's quest, we actually get to see how our ponies find the sentient gingerbread house, and it actually has a very creepy atmosphere. The ponies walk through the woods and then stumble upon the abandoned house. And right off the bat, the inclusion of this moment allows for the audience to see more of this world. Like, you guys made a whole background for this scene, only to limit its usage to the actual fight in the final release. There's really good scene setting here, with the camera panning down from the tall, foreboding trees to the ground where our ponies are walking. It allows for the tone of the scene to be set effectively. The wonder and whimsy of the previous scene with the book fairy is gone, and we're now in dark and spooky territory. The ponies are scared and on their guard, especially Zip, as they trek through this unfamiliar terrain. And this allows us as viewers to properly feel what they are feeling. They don't know what they are going to find. The first trial could be anything, and they don't know if they'll make it out of it alive. All of this is properly conveyed through the shots used and the characters' reactions. And the episode continues this trend by having the actual reveal of the house be equally as foreboding, with the house being coated in this dark shade of red. I'm unsure about what exactly this frame would have looked like finalized had it been kept in, but the reds in the animatic frame do complement the mood really nicely. It's scary, and the placeholder music adds to this very well. Sparky then tries to eat the candy cane door because, of course, he's a baby, and this is not the first time Turtle has used him to incite an incident. And this is the moment the house decides to wake up and chase the ponies. This is what leads into our action scene. Doesn't this come off so much better just from me describing it? The inclusion of all these moments leading up to the action scene might seem unnecessary on the surface, as when you boil it down, it's just our characters going to the location. But I'd argue that when you cut this scene, when you remove all of that build-up, you lose an important element of storytelling, and that is setting the tone. Adding all those moments before it back in allows us to properly get inside our characters' heads and feel what they are feeling. The scene is allowed to breathe and pace itself properly, with plenty of time for us to get oriented and feel the danger they are walking into. And this is better if you want to show off more of the world and properly set the tone of a given scene. You don't want to instantly cut to the action if you can help it, as the audience needs time to process what is happening or what just happened. The final release might as well be a montage. In fact, it is, as there is no time for anyone to understand what is going on before we gotta cut to the next set piece. What makes the animatic even better is that the moment the gingerbread house actually wakes up is actually played off very slowly. We see individual shots of it lifting itself off the ground and roaring at the ponies. This allows the audience to actually process the moment and go, "Oh Sparky, what did you do?" In the final episode, you can just tell the scene got shortened. Significantly. First, our ponies are already at the clearing, which instantly causes the scene to lose all of its eerie build-up, and then the house just wakes up for no reason. Yeah, Sparky didn't do it. He's innocent! The ponies are just standing there. Why did the house wake up? Because it's a monster? Because the ponies are there? There is no communicated reason why the monster had to become a monster. That sounds so weird out of context. It just is. And it's only one shot, too, instead of the slow, dramatic reveal in the original animatic. To quote my boy Pillow Chum, "Oh, that's too bad! What a shame!" Congratulations! The actual fight with the gingerbread house monster pretty much plays beat for beat with the final episode with no real additions, so I'm just gonna skip to the end. After Sunny KOs the monster, the ponies cheer, and we get this moment. That was again, not in the final release.
Right. Let's get moving. I have a feeling we're gonna need all of our magic to get through these quests.
Did you catch that moment? Yep. We get a close-up on Misty's face, where she again looks anxious about her own magic. This was a moment that was intended to progress her character arc in this episode. And it's a really good moment thematically. By seeing how good Sunny was at defeating the monster, Misty worries that she won't be good enough in comparison to help out. And it was once again completely cut out in the final release. Like, I get why. If you're gonna cut out the real inciting incident for the conflict, you might as well leave out any evidence that you cut the storyline, otherwise audiences will be confused. But do you see how much better this scene reads now? Sunny's trial was meant to serve the story. It was meant to serve Misty's character arc. It wasn't just a random action scene. Tom Goodman knew exactly what he was doing when he wrote that moment. The Tarito writers know how to tell stories. It's just how they're edited. But again, it's gone. Because Hasbro forced this episode into the box that is corporately mandated runtime. Then comes Zip's trial, which I'm just going to keep brief because the majority of it does play beat for beat in the final release. The moment I do want to mention though is at the end of their little race, where Zip gets a medal for her victory, and she actually does a high five with the dragon, which was not in the final cut. You're going to hear me say that a lot in this video. This moment is actually important, because it shows both parties acknowledging the competition, and it humanizes the dragon a little bit. It gives them a character. In this scene, the dragon is acknowledging the fact that Zip won the race. They're being a good sport about their loss, and there's no hard feelings between either party. The dragon had their job, and they accomplished it. Zip builds bridges here by ending the game on a high note, and remaining on good terms with her competitor. And most importantly of all, this scene signifies that Zip has passed her trial, which I find far more satisfying a moment than the scene just literally flying by you without any sort of narrative payoff. Chapter the 3rd. Why cut Izzy's quest? So by this point, you have probably noticed a pattern when it comes to my analysis of this episode. All of the character and heart that originally made this episode fantastic were sucked out, and taking out all of that leaves an only decent final product. But you know what? Let's give whatever powers that be at Hasbro some benefit of the doubt. Obviously, not everything can make it into the final cut of a piece of media. That's a given, both in film and animation. You know the old saying, kill your darlings. Alright, fine. Let's go with that for a second. If we had to cut Misty's beautiful character flaw, if we had to cut the build up to the gingerbread house monster, if we had to cut out the best part of Zip's quest that actually adds to her character, so be it. What's gotta go has gotta go. But Hasbro, riddle me this. If you had to choose between what I presume is Hitch's quest with the gamified tiles and Izzy's quest with building the makeshift bridge, why cut Izzy's quest? Think about it. If you had to choose between one of these scenes to keep in the final episode, if only one of these scenes could stay, why did Izzy's quest end up on the cutting room floor? Not only is rebuilding a broken bridge with magic just a classic trope in fantasy, which this episode is clearly inspired by, but it's also a much quieter moment in contrast to all the actiony scenes beforehand. It also just reads better when put alongside the previous sections. Sunny's quest was a solo trial. She was the sole pony who was able to defeat the gingerbread house monster. Zip's quest was also a solo quest. It was her that won the race and shook hooves with the dragon. It was her who claimed that victory. The tile floor scene comes off as a group quest. They're all participating. Like, yeah, Hitch is also focused on in this part, but only at the end. It is visually stimulating and creative, sure, I'll give it that. And it also makes a really good thumbnail. Both Hasbro and PTS used it as such. But even so, what purpose does it serve in the narrative? Hitch didn't have to overcome anything. In fact, he doesn't overcome his fear until Hide and Seek, 37 episodes later, and even the original draft of that was questionable. Whereas the other quests meant something, even in their shortened states. I don't think Hitch's scene was treated with any sort of respect in comparison. He's a joke in this scene. Literally. He's skidding and trying to avoid falling. He's a nervous wreck all the way until the end. And that would mean something if there was a scene of him afterwards saying something along the lines of, "We did it, buddy! We conquered our fears!" But he doesn't. Not even the animatic shows it. So really, what did Hitch accomplish through his trial in comparison to Sunny and Zip? I'll tell you what, nothing. His part of the scene is a joke, not something actually meant to make us respect him. Izzy's scene with the bridge, meanwhile, is treated with respect. You get to see her stop and assess the situation, she thinks fast under pressure, she puts a creative mind to work, and she even adds her little Izzy touch to the bridge once she builds it. Don't get me wrong, the scene is still funny. Izzy literally stops everyone right in their tracks just to add her finishing touches, and only then does she let her friends cross. It's comedic, but in a more subtle way, and it's also respectful of her character. In fact, the scene was so good that it was one of the few deleted scenes to actually make it to the V2 animatic stage. They came dangerously close to actually keeping it in, but I guess one of the higher-ups said nope. In the released V1 animatic, Izzy makes the bridge rain water, but in the more finalized V2 animatic, she makes it rain glitter. And you know what? Glitter works better. It definitely screams Izzy a lot more than the V1 animatic, so I'm happy with this change. With this scene, you not only get a subtly genius moment with Izzy putting her unicycling skills to work, but also, you get a very stunning visual. They made concept art of this. How cool would it have been to see the gorge scene fully animated? When paired up with Sunny and Zip's quests, Izzy's fits right alongside them like a glove. It's a solo quest, and she's the one that saves the day, exactly like those prior 2 action scenes. And most importantly, going back to my earlier point, it's also a quieter moment that perfectly contrasts the prior 2 scenes. Not everything has to be go go go. Not everything has to be just big loud spectacle after big loud spectacle. Tell Your Tale also excels brilliantly in its quieter moments. In fact, that's what I'd argue gives G5 as a whole its charm, the more subtly brilliant moments of writing. You can either keep the group quest tile scene that just happened to feature Hitch at the end, or you can keep the far superior Izzy bridge scene. I think we all know which one they ultimately went with. And that's really a shame, because Hasbro could have had a visually stunning scene that also treated one of their core characters with respect, but they chose not to. And I think that's emblematic, if anything, of the priorities just being completely in the wrong place when it came to editing this episode. Chapter Forever After, the climax. Well guys, we made it. Throughout this so far 16.5 minutes of analysis, you've seen me analyze all the heart and writing nuances that made the initial version of this episode fantastic. All of the setup and creative choices that made for a much more enjoyable viewing experience, it's all been building to this. The final battle at Xantorp's cave. At first, the animatic plays beat for beat with the final release, but there's actually an added line from Sunny that I think is really funny.
Don't worry, Misty. Together we have way more magical powers than any monster.
Why is this line funny? Well, it shows that Sunny is overconfident in this moment. She thinks she can take on Xantorp no problem. After all, she beat the Gingerbread House monster, and all the other quests were easy. Not to mention, she faced down Opaline and other Monster of the Week situations before. So, how hard can this be? How hard can one throwaway monster be? Oh!
It was at this moment that he knew.
See, this is why Sunny getting bodied is funny. In the final release, it just sort of happens because plot. But this one line reframes the context to, oh, you thought Xantorp would be easy? Sucks to be you. There's a bit of dark irony in that. Everything else more or less plays the same, until we get to Misty's part, which I find to be very fascinating from a psychology standpoint. Xantorp is heading straight for her, and she's rooted in place. She wants to flee, but it's like her body completely froze up in the face of confrontation. She cannot get herself to move. This is where I'm gonna have to offer a little throwback to an older video of mine. That video being the Understanding Misty Psychoanalysis video. I'm still so proud of that one, you guys. Being able to help other trauma survivors feel heard through Misty's story really meant a lot to me. It's still to this day one of my favorite videos, and probably even one of the best videos I've ever made in terms of social function. I did not expect that many people to really resonate with that video's theme. But anyway, I did some research into why Misty freezes up during this moment, and I actually found something really interesting. According to nationwidechildrens.org, freezing is a common reaction during trauma. Freezing can look like being unable to move, or even feeling numb. Many survivors report feeling disconnected from their bodies during an attack or abusive situation, as if they are watching the event happen to someone else. This is actually very interesting to read. Based on the text, it's reasonable to assume Misty suffered a lot of physical abuse under Opaline. Granted, we only see the emotional/verbal side of things throughout Make Your Mark. For the most part, does restraint count as physical? But this actually implies that Misty's been in these sort of attack situations before, hence why her brain automatically defaults to survival mode here. I find that to be a really fascinating glimpse into Misty's psychology, and it reframes her eventual cutie mark mantra moment as her having to mentally overcome her own fight or flight reflexes, and stand up for herself in order to save the day. That's good! This moment once again shows just how realistic and well written of a character Misty actually is. This animatic not only gave Misty a very relatable character flaw at the beginning, but it also gave her a moment where she has to mentally overcome her own lingering trauma in order to stop Xantorp. And it's only by overcoming said trauma does Misty discover her own unique magic, the one that puts her in the same league as her friends, the culmination of her character arc this episode, discovering that she has empathy magic. Similar to Sunset Shimmer and Equestria Girls. I have to ask, why cut this? Like, yeah, I know why, runtime and stuff, but come on. You cut out all the good stuff with Misty from a psychology standpoint. How is any of this supposed to read now? Don't get me wrong, in the final release, the moment is still epic. The slow building MLP jingle in combination with the sound effects and Misty's speech, there's just something else about seeing it all finalized on screen. But at the same time, the moment is robbed of its context and thematic weight. Here it's just, oh, episode's almost over, better throw in a solution. In the animatic, this is the culmination of Misty's character arc, and her discovering her own unique magic through overcoming her trauma. Doesn't this make the moment so much cooler? I can't see this already epic moment the same way anymore. And you know what? That's a good thing. Misty then does the whole, maybe we can be your friends moment to Xantorp, but the shot is actually reversed in the animatic, this time being at a left angle instead of right. Huh, interesting. On to the ending. Chapter 5. It all makes sense now. For most of it, the ending does play shot for shot with the final episode, but there are a couple key differences. First, I do want to comment on just how much the whole thanks to some special magic from Misty line from Sunny makes a whole lot more sense now. Watching everything in context, including Misty's character arc, the resolution just hits a lot harder now. Because this whole episode was about Misty discovering what makes her special. It was about her finding her own unique path and fitting in with her friends. It was about Misty proving that she is just as worthy of her abilities as her friends are. It's why Misty had to be the one to save the day, not her friends, because this was her story. It's always been her story, even in the final cut, but the animatic just makes it a whole lot more clear. It's why she had to be in the background for most of it, because the remaining Unity 5 had to constantly upstage Misty in order for the moment she actually does save the day to hit as hard as it does. When all was lost, it was the element of heart that did what none of her friends ever could. She made friends with what was thought to be the most feared monster in Questopia, and she helped him come out of his shell. She saw into his heart, and helped him realize that he can belong, and as a result, she unquestionably now belongs with her friends. Everyone laughing over Hitch's story, Misty included, just gets me now. Xantorp licking Misty like a golden retriever, and the two sharing one final exchange before the book fairy sends them all home, just gets to me now. Xantorp enjoying a meal with the book fairy, having finally overcome his loneliness through Misty, and now being ready to make new friends, just hits hard. Especially since I'm doing that now. I'm rebuilding myself, I'm finding new friends, I've made new friends. Supportive friends. People I'm proud to be associated with. People who actually give me faith in this community. Misty and Xantorp's arcs are just special in a way that words can't ever do justice to. This whole beautiful coming-of-age plot was framed within the context of a Wizard of Oz-style fantasy story. Tom Gibman used fantasy as a way of conveying something tangible, something real. And this, I feel, makes Buried in a Good Book one of the most subtly brilliant episodes in all of LPG5. There is just so much subtext behind this episode. It's not perfect now. No, it's not. Don't get me wrong. I still think the tile scene could have been conveyed a lot better by actually zeroing in on Hitch, actually focus on him and make him overcome his fear. Even if that would mean hide and seek would be a different episode, so be it. These characters are so versatile, they practically write themselves. You can tell any story with them. But this episode is still incredible, with overall genius writing behind every scene. I was wrong about this episode initially. It's so much better than I ever gave it credit for. In a way, there's one hidden good side to Hasbro dumping G5 in the way they did. It's not just the fact that the remaining episodes after the water park can finally see the light of day. It's not just the fact that fans now have the avenue to pick up the story and finish it through individual projects. It's also the fact that these older episodes can finally be seen for what they were intended to be. It's the fact that Lil Critter Workshop, the passionate, dedicated minds behind Tell Your Tale, who were dealt a bad hand by a company who never cared about what they were making, can finally get the justice they deserve after everything they've been through. I respect these guys immensely. I have a sort of reverence for everything they've done, how they persevered at every turn, despite Hasbro not caring about the story or the characters. It's why I still cover these leaks, despite everything that's happened and that's been revealed. I'm not here to tell you that, oh, PTS is the best team ever, you should absolutely ignore the drama and endorse them. Nope, I'm not saying that. Everyone's thoughts on the team following the whole controversy is valid. I have my own thoughts, but this video isn't the place for it. I don't want to insert myself into a drama I don't belong in. I want to help actually grow this community again, not divide it further. Whether or not you want to support this team or be associated with them is entirely on you and based on your own morals. I am just an analyst looking to make positive change in this fandom through showing fans a new way forward. What I actually want to do is make the case as to why you should still independently support these leaks. Not for any one team or project, but because the people behind our favorite generation made these episodes. These episodes belong to them. We can still support leak-based fan projects. In fact, we should absolutely encourage the spread of more. Fandoms thrive on variety and competition. But we should never let one project's slip-ups stop us from supporting the show that we love. Especially since the creators behind it deserve so much better. I'm doing this because I want to show my love for Lil Critter Workshop and Tired Tail. I don't ever want this fandom to forget G5, as much as they may desperately want to, and I want to keep these leaks in the public consciousness. I want people to know just how good Tired Tail and G5 actually are. Just how fantastic the writing actually is. And if that includes covering the original versions of these episodes that existed before Hasbro sabotaged them, well, so be it. Chapter 6! The real takeaway. And so, with all of this being said, now that we're finally at the end, you might be asking, what is the main thesis of this video? How was any of this relevant? Did you just want an excuse to make another defense video on G5? And to that I say, yes. Welcome to my channel if you're new. But I promise there was a point to all of this. There is something I want you all to take away from this video. And that is, there is almost always more to a given story than what you see on the surface. The quality of a piece of media is almost never what it appears to be. It's almost never just black and white. Mediocre or bad stories aren't always intentional. What might appear to be a decent or mid-episode of My Little Pony is almost never that way by design. Someone or something has to make it that way, whether it be a flaw in the writing, or in this episode's case, cynical corporate mandates forcing edits that compromise the integrity of the story. Buried in a Good Book was once an incredible episode that gave Misty a fantastic coming-of-age style story, told through the lens of a storybook fantasy adventure. It used fictional, out-there elements to convey real themes and real messages. But the heart of the story was cut down, restructured, neutered, and butchered in the edit, until only the surface-level elements remain. But you know what? Despite everything I have said, I still can't call the final version of this episode a bad episode. I just can't. You want to know why? Because this episode was still at its core about something. When divorced from the animatic, when looked at on its own merits, Buried in a Good Book the episode still conveys those themes. It might not be as good as its original counterpart, but I still find the episode's resolution to be beautiful. Misty breaking down Xantor's mental walls, literally, was still perfect. You can still see the skeleton of what was once the original story in here. Stories will always mean more despite their flaws, when they're trying to have a social function, when they are trying to convey meaning to their intended audience. And Buried in a Good Book still was that. It was still enjoyable and fun, and the resolution was still poignant. And, I'll admit it, I'm just used to seeing everything in full color. I've gone to bat for the Tired Tail art style before, and I don't care if I have to say it until I turn blue. This art style is beautiful. It was born out of the original 2D art style pioneered by the original visionary Brian Goldner for what was once the original G5 2D show. It conveys the themes and values of G5 within its character designs and overall visual identity. The backgrounds are stunning and uniquely detailed. And I know it's always going to be easier to prefer a full color episode over a black and white animatic. But, you know, I hope I can get you all used to engaging with G5 in this form. Not only because there is absolutely nothing wrong with using animatics to tell the story of your show, but also because even the older episodes, not cancelled by the powers that be, still deserve love. Even older animatics still deserve attention, because they're the originals. They represent what these episodes were supposed to be, the originally intended vision. In fact, you know what? To prove my point that these older animatics are worth watching, I'm gonna do something a little extra here. Here is a special shout out to the older animatics that, while not having enough change to warrant their own videos, are still worth talking about in some way. The animatic for No Place Like Home features a new extra ending where the main six actually discover Alora's presence at the board trot, which kind of ties into the events of Special 2. The animatic for Attack of the Vending Machine features actual Starblazer. The animatic for Ooh New Friend features an extended scene of Alora coming out of her cave at the beginning to inspect what just happened, as well as Alora literally going insane later over Izzy's obsession with fruit baskets. The animatic for Hall of Mirrors improves on almost every critique I have with the final episode, with there being an actual setup for the lesson Hitch has to learn, as well as dramatically improved pacing all throughout. Also, did I mention before that I love A Swing in the Misty's demo songs? Holy cow, I actually want to use them in my upcoming episodes. To close all this off, Buried in a Good Book was a good episode, but it could have been great. And now that the original is out there, I can finally say with confidence that this episode has been redeemed. But, what do you guys think of the animatic for Buried in a Good Book? Have you seen it yet? Do you plan to? Do you like it? Hate it? Is it better or worse? Feel free to sound off in the comments below. As for me, well, I'm gonna go drink water. It's been a while since I've done that. Until next time, this is Hawk Nightwing signing out. Hoof to heart.